Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, season 2, all about winning. This is Ben Kinney here with Bob Stewart and Chad Himes.
Hey, Ben.
How you doing?
Don't talk to me, talk to the audience. They're the ones listening. I'm the one that has to be here.
You see the look he just gave me when he looked over here and said that? Like,
This, ladies and gentlemen, is story time. And the story that we're going to tell you, it's an interesting story. It's an inspiring story. It's a story of success and failure and ambition and grit. And the story is going to end up with an opportunity for you to create a vision for you and your life. We want you to create a map, a board, a drawing, a sketch of what your life is going to look like in the future. Extra credit, by the way, if you go into our Facebook group after listening to this and post a picture of the vision map that you drew, we'll do something cute for you. Chad, how do they get there?
Well, they go to facebook.com/group/win-make-give, of course, to get there. And I got to tell you, Ben, I'm loving this. They're not going to air on the same day. And you don't know that we did this. Yet on the 15-point plan, we recorded an episode that I think is going to perfectly match with this one. So we're going to challenge you also. Go over and check out the 15-point plan podcast. Check out, we just went into in-depth episodes on goals, including creating your vision board. And I have this feeling your story time might tie perfectly into the episode that was recorded over there as well.
My story starts a long, long time ago, Bob.
in a galaxy far, far away?
Nope.
No.
This galaxy was in Chicago. The year was 1901. The day was December 5th.
Oh.
Walter Elias was born as the fourth of 5 children to a family that owned a farm in the greater area. Now, this family just struggled, and at a very young age, they had to sell the farm. And the family ended up packing up and moving all of their goods to Kansas City, Missouri. Now, at a young age, little Walter, he woke up at 3:30 in the morning to help his dad deliver newspapers on his dad's paper route. From there, he grew a passion to a little piece of the newspaper, which we'll come back to then later. The family, things don't pan out in Kansas City, Missouri for whatever reason. I'm sure Kansas City is an amazing place. They pack up and they move back to Chicago. This individual, Walter, he was not a great student. And in fact, by 16 years old, Bob, he dropped out of high school and he forged some documents, his birth certificate, so that he could join the effort to support World War I. Now, he joined in what was called the Red Cross Ambulance Corps. And he had to forge the documents because he had to be 17 in order to join, and he was only 16. But he had his mind made up that this was what he was going to do. Now, if you're a long-term Win, Make, Give listener, and you've listened to all season 1, you'll hear another story of a gentleman that was in the same exact boot camp as Mr. Walter Elias. But we'll come back to this. Now, Walter was kind of a shy, self-deprecating, I kind of relate to that. If you're going to make fun of anybody, make fun of yourself type of guy. He was insecure, kind of a private individual. In public, he was known to be warm and slightly outgoing. Well, he had super high expectations and high standards for himself and for anybody else that worked with him.
You could take that last bit, and I think if we just read that and said, who are we describing? Everybody listening to this would say Ben Kinney.
The self-deprecating, insecure, shy guy.
And keep going.
Oh.
Outgoing personality in public as needed, had very high expectations and high standards. Absolutely. I think that would be a definition of anybody who's had the chance to get to know you.
That's very sweet. Well, Walter Elias kind of hit a home run, so to speak. I don't want to say that he scored, but in 1925, he got married. That would be at age 24-ish. And he married a young lady named Lillian, who he ended up staying married to until his death. Lillian was an artist. Those two individuals had two daughters, Diane and Sharon. Diane was born in 1933, and Sharon was adopted in 1936. As Walter Elias kind of grew his world and became more in the public eye, he was worried about things about his kids being kidnapped because of the Lindenberg kidnapping that happened during that time period. He took extreme steps to make sure that his daughters' children were not photographed by the press or published. He would die today if he had to see what was happening on social media, the Instagrams, the TikToks, and so on. But let's get back to the point of this. Walter Elias he was an artist, and he wanted to go into creating cartoons and animations. And Chad, his very first character that he created, do you remember what it was called?
Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, Ben.
Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
That's right.
Now, tell us about Oswald.
Well, Oswald was peppy, alert, saucy, venturesome, and he was neat and trim. That was what he thought about when he created Oswald and this little character that he wanted to build and design.
Sounds like Bob. Peppy, alert, saucy, venturesome. He's not super trim, but, 8 out of 10 is not a horrible thing. Now, Walter Elias created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, not for his own company, Chad.
Nope.
He had a job.
Yep.
Do you remember who he was working for?
Universal, if I'm not mistaken, Ben, was who he was working for at the time.
So he went back to his boss and he said, I want some more money, honey, for this Oswald the Lucky Rabbit series.
Yep.
And the boss, like most miserable bosses, said, I want to pay you less. And Walter Elias said, I want to make more. And Walter learned something very, very interesting about this. What did he learn? Do you remember, Chad?
Well, the thing that came from it, Ben, was that he found out that anything created while he worked there was theirs. So they owned the intellectual property rights to the character he had created.
So all of his life effort into creating this series, this cartoon, this individual,
They owned it.
was in vain.
Yep.
He lost the people that worked for him,
Yep.
right? He lost this character,
Yep.
his being that he created that was successful. And it caused him to, by 1931, to have some sort of his own nervous breakdown. And he dug himself out with this kind of vow that I'm not going to work for other people, and started his own company. And his own company was called what?
They called it Disney World. Well, I guess they just called it Disney at the time.
Disney.
Yeah.
And the individual's, his name was?
Walt Disney.
Or Walter Elias.
Disney.
Disney.
Yes. If you haven't figured it out by now, yes. Walt
Yeah.
Disney is who Ben's been talking about.
In 1934, he started a multi-year project to create what we know today as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Everyone around him said, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. This is going to end the company. And Walt spent nearly $1.5 million, which was
In 1934? Can you imagine what that is today?
how many times over the budget, Bob?
3 times.
3 times. They said, hey, we're going to build this thing for $500,000, and they came in with a bill for 1.5. That sounds like most things today. Yeah. Now, in 1937, when he finished, Snow White premiered.
Can I just really quick before we go on to Snow White premiering? Because at that point in 1934, he's got this small company, right? They're making these short films, right? That would play like before they'd play at the movie theater.
Before the movies.
Before the real movie, right? It'd be
Steamboat Willie.
3 or 5 minutes. Yeah, Steamboat Willie. That's the first Mickey Mouse when he
That's
was
right.
introduced, right? So their entire company was built around this thing. And he basically said, I want to build a full movie.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do the whole deal.
An
And
animated movie.
an animated movie, and we're going to dump a bunch of money. Like, basically all the profits they'd made on all these short films they were building. Like, he was putting it all on the line in many ways on something that nobody even knew if there was a demand for a full-length cartoon.
Correct. And he had such high expectations and high standards, like you mentioned, Ben, that what he did was he actually hired animals and people so that when the artists were drawing, they could literally get a 3D look at what a bunny rabbit looked like. So they were drawing it realistically. They weren't just saying, oh, let's just draw what we think a bunny looks like for the movie. He wanted it realistic, and that's what ended up costing them so much money to create this and change what the industry ended up looking like for animation.
Yeah, I was a stand-in when they started making the Popeye series. Bob's just shaking his head at me. Now, I didn't say for Popeye, I said for the Popeye series.
Yeah,
I was the hamburger.
The hamburger guy.
I'll
Yeah, I couldn't
gladly
think of
pay
his
you,
name.
pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. I don't know, you guys just made an assumption. So when they debuted the Snow White in 1937, how'd it do, Chad?
Well, Ben, it became the most successful motion picture of 1938, and by May 1939 had grossed $6.5 million, which made it the most successful sound film to date.
And a one mini.
Well, it won an honorary Academy Award, and if you actually go look, they actually have one Oscar with 7 dwarf-size Oscars that went with it.
Cute.
Yeah, that's what they gave Disney. It was an honorary Academy Award that he got for Snow White.
Well, during that time, shortly after, the world entered into something else, which was a big international crisis. Remember what that was, Jen?
World War II?
World War II.
Yeah, World War II.
And it caused massive pain to Walt Disney and his company. After this home run of Snow White, they were forced to go onto the stock market and be a publicly traded company. One of the things that we should all kind of know in business, people go onto the stock market for a variety of reasons. Namely, most of them are to pay off the investors or to pay off debt. It's a form of financing, and Walt had no choice. In 1940, shares of Walt Disney were selling for $5.
Not even on the stock exchange. This was on a thing called the over-the-counter market.
OTC.
They were selling for $5 a share. Ben, I did the homework because I just had to do this when I knew we were going to talk about this. Because you and Bob talk all the time about the stocks you want to buy or you're buying, and one day it's going to. If you bought one share in 1940 when it went public,
$5.
$5.
Okay, I got $5. I'm in.
With all the times it split, you would now have 768 shares just by buying one, just from the splits the stock has had.
768.
768 shares. Ben,
That's like
if
a
you
banana.
invested $5,000 then,
You would have got 1,000 shares in the beginning.
if you would bought $5,000 worth then, you'd have over $110 million worth of Disney stock today.
$110 million?
$110 million.
That, Bob, that's like our Dogecoin and our SafeMoon cryptocurrency investment.
This is not an investment strategy for you to necessarily follow. The what opinions of the speakers are ours and not advice, right? Do we have to say something like that?
Yeah.
Now, in 1957, when they finally got added to the New York
Stock exchange.
Stock
yep.
Exchange, it was trading at $13.88.
Yes.
Now, if we would have invested $5,000 then,
$20 million today. You'd
Not
be
quite
over
110
$20
million, right? What was that? 12, 13 years later, 17 years later.
You'd be over $20 million today.
okay, now in 1940, Chad, tell us what happens.
Well, I just kept going on this, right? And I said, if you had bought at the 1940 when it came out, your 7,000 or your 768,000 shares that you would have now based on the split would be earning you $1.3 million in dividends. Forget what you own in stock.
Yeah.
They would just be giving you
Annually.
$1.3 million every year as a thank you, basically, just from dividends on the share.
Having
if you had bought
invested
it,
$5,000 70 years ago.
if you had bought it in 1957 when it hit the New York Stock Exchange, you'd still be getting $243,000 every year in dividends.
Crazy.
Who can you buy a share of today for your grandchildren to be receiving this kind of money 70 years later?
Are you asking for my advice?
No.
We're
The
telling
advice of
everybody
the
to go
speakers are not-
Go out and think about what that is and what are those companies that are emerging right now that we know are going to be around 70 years from now, basically.
Yes. Absolutely. It's amazing. I know we love talking about that stuff, and you always love dreaming. If I could have gone back, there is some company today that is the next Disney. There is some company out there that is going to 70 years from now be out there. We've got a few other business profiles that we're looking at, and I've been doing this math on all of them now, saying if only, which means every year there's at least 1, 2, 5 companies just like this hitting the stock market. But Ben, one of my most fascinating things I found when you said you wanted to talk about Disney, before we even get to that mind map that you were talking about, was the vision with the land. It was just amazing. Bob, we've talked about this before. Disneyland is in Anaheim.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. And Disneyland is in Anaheim. And it became a huge success. I mean, Disneyland was huge, the park, the movies, and all of that stuff. And Walt wanted bigger and better and more control than he had when he was in Anaheim. So where was he planning to go with the next project?
To the eastern seaboard, basically.
Correct.
Somewhere, right? They looked at Disneyland's visitors and they figured out that 75% of the population of the United States is east of the Mississippi, but they had a very small number of visitors percentage-wise at Disneyland that were coming from that far away. So they had to get an eastern base.
Yes. So they decided to go. Where did they end up, Bob?
Orlando, Florida.
Orlando, Florida, swampland. And what he had to do, Ben, was there wasn't one chunk of land that Disney could just go in and say, well, I'm going to buy this 27,000 acres and it's just sitting here. He had to be secretive about it. And what they did was they set up fake companies. Some of them were like the Latin American Development and Management Corporation, the Reedy Creek Ranch Corporation. And each of these companies that were set up were buying different parcels of land all around the area outside of Orlando where Disney World ends up being. Nothing was purchased under the same name because they didn't want people to think someone like Walt Disney was coming in, because the other landholders would just ask for more. They would just raise the price knowing they would be the one holding Disney back. So after 6 months, when they closed on the first land purchase, they delayed recording the deeds even so they could get more land under contract, so nobody saw what was coming until all of a sudden, the company had purchased 27,400 acres for more than $5 million from 51 different landowners. And the average price on the land after the deal was only $182 an acre. That's what he got at the time. Amazingly, though, the land now stands at valued over $3.5 billion is what it would have been.
Well, and Chad, you know this. I don't have to tell you. You did a lot of the research on this, but right after they announced that park was going to be built, and remember, he'd gotten the land at $1 or $182 an acre within like days, essentially, of the announcement being made. Prices on that land skyrocketed to what? $80,000 an acre. I mean, they went from $182 an acre up to $80,000, like overnight, basically, because they were bringing this massive thing into Orlando.
Which if he would have waited, that when it went out, how much would it have cost him to buy the same land that he bought?
I don't even know what the math is there.
$2+ billion. $2 billion. Now, he never really got to see Disney World take shape. He had a vision and a drawing for it, but Walter Elias Disney, aka Walt Disney, he was a heavy smoker ever since World War I. He didn't use cigarettes with filters. He also smoked a pipe at a very, very young age. In 1966, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. On November 30th, he fell unwell, was taken to the hospital, and on December 15th, 10 days after his 61st birthday, Walt Disney died of basically a lung collapse caused by the cancer. He never got to see his world take shape. Now, Walt Disney said once, if you can visualize it, if you can dream it, there's some way to do it. Today, I want you to go out and search for Walt Disney's vision map on Google.
Ben, I'm going to post this picture in the Facebook group, facebook.com/group/win-make-give. So come check it out when this episode, when you're listening, it'll be there waiting for you.
So this image, I have it framed and on one of my walls here. It's inspired me for a long time. Was created in 1957. I want you to zoom in, and I want you to see the different items that were drawn on this vision map. The center of it was his theatrical films, and it was connected to merchandise and TV commercial and bonus films, music, publications, magazines, comic strips, and this crazy idea of this place called Disneyland. And there's arrows pointing to each one of these things, go in one direction and go in the other. Some are two-way, where you got to see how they interacted with each other. In your life, there is a map, and it's either going to be drawn by somebody else or it's going to be drawn by you. Our advice is that you take the time to draw your own. Now, we know that if you draw it, Chad, there's a much better chance of it actually becoming a reality. Now, Walt Disney said lots of things in his career. Why don't you take a couple of quotes and as everybody's thinking about what's their Disneyland going to look like, let's share a couple of the greater messages that we found from Walt.
You know, Ben, I love one. He said, first, think. Second, dream. Third, believe. And finally, dare.
Oh, I love that. Bob, what do you got?
I love why worry? If you've done the very best you can, worrying won't make it any better. I don't spend a lot, at the times when I am worried, it's probably because I haven't done everything I could to eliminate that worry. That one just rings like really, really big in my head.
He said, do what you do so well that they will want to see it again and bring their friends. It reminds me of Milton Hershey when he said, I never spent $1 on marketing or advertising. I basically let my product speak for itself. So Walt, you did what you did so well that we all want to see it again and again, and we want to bring our friends. Bob Stewart is the perfect example because nobody's been to Disneyland more than Bob Stewart and his family.
And you've never been to Disneyland. I want to take you one day for your first time.
You've never been to Disneyland or Disney World?
No, my parents hated my guts, and we didn't have a lot of money, and I never got to do that.
Wow. I was born the year Disney World opened, so I get to celebrate a birthday year with Disney World. So, Dave, that actually means you're older than Disney World because you've got me by a year, I believe. I've had the pleasure of taking my daughter a few times to Disney World, having been based on the East Coast for so long. I got the pleasure to take Nita a few years ago for the first time. She, too, had never been to Disney World to really take it in. It is an experience.
So I haven't been to Disney World. I've been to Disneyland. It's where we go. My wife and I, we go 3 or 4 times a year. We leave we take the kids once of those times, but my wife and I go without the kids the other 2 or 3 times a year.
And audience, if you've been to both, you are doing what I'm doing right now, which is shaking your head at Bob.
No, I know that
Disneyland is
Disney
awesome.
World's the big, huge. We'll take the boys there. We want to. Here's why we haven't gone yet, because we are Disneyland ninjas. We move through Disneyland unlike anything you've ever seen. We get on all the rides multiple times. We know all of the food. It's like home to us. And so
sometimes people spend their entire life just being comfortable, never experience anything else. Ladies and gentlemen,
Ben, I got a Disney quiz for you.
No,
I don't get to quiz you?
You don't, Chad. We are going to do the Disney quiz later when we dive into the Disney company and the Disney Corporation.
All right, we'll hold it for the company itself.
So today, here's your homework. Create your Disney map, create the vision for your world, share it with us, and maybe we'll share some of ours on what we're working on and what we're thinking. And then the next episode, I want you to pay attention because we're going to teach you how to eliminate all the bugs in your business and in your life. And we might follow it up with a dive into Walt Disney, the corporation itself, and we'll allow Chad to do some of his quizzes that he loves so much.
Yes, because I love that Dave gets the music that goes with him. All right, we know that Disney is one of the most magical places in the world. And we know that it's because of Walt Disney that we have these magical places, these magical moments, and these magical experiences. But having you here with us on the podcast, well, that's pretty magical to us too. Pretty magical for each of us that you are here joining us. And we hope you'll take this episode and share it with somebody, because every episode in season 2, we are focused on the give of Win, Make, Give. And we are making a donation to charities that you have been selecting. So we hope you will share this episode, listen to the episode, share it and talk about the episode while you listen to this episode. And remember to join us on our next episode. Until then, as always, do good.